Your fridge only has 4 hours, not 4 days, 4 hours. After that, the food inside it is a gamble. And that's just the first thing that breaks down when the power goes out for real. Most people think a blackout means one thing: no lights. Grab a flashlight, light a candle, wait it out, done. But that's not what actually happens. A real blackout doesn't hit you all at once. It comes in stages. And each stage takes something else away from you that you didn't even think about. So let's walk through it. Minute by minute, hour by hour. What actually happens to a normal American home in the first 24 hours after the power goes out. Not the movie version, the real one. Here's the thing people get wrong first. They picture a blackout as some huge, dramatic event. Cities going dark, sirens, chaos in the streets. And sure, that happens sometimes, during a massive hurricane or an ice storm that takes down half a state's power lines. But most outages aren't that. Most of them are smaller. A tree falls on a line. A transformer blows. Something breaks a few streets over, and your whole neighborhood goes quiet. The problem is, in the first few minutes, you don't know which kind you're dealing with. Is this 5 minutes? 5 hours? 5 days? Nobody tells you right away. And that uncertainty is actually the first real problem, not the darkness, the not knowing. So let's start at minute 0. The lights cut out. The fridge stops humming. If you've got a router, it drops. Your AC or your heater just stops working, depending on the season. If you're near a window, you probably look outside to see if it's just your house or the whole street. That's a normal reaction. You're trying to figure out how big this is. In the first 15 minutes, most people are doing 3 things. Checking if it's just them, checking their phone for any outage alerts, and looking for a flashlight because it's suddenly a lot darker than they expected, even during the day, if your home doesn't get a ton of natural light. Here's something people don't think about. If it's dark out and you're near a road, this is actually one of the more dangerous windows of the whole event. Traffic lights go out. Streets get confusing. If any power lines came down because of a storm or an accident, they can still be live, and they're incredibly dangerous. You never touch a downed line, ever. Not with a stick, not with gloves, nothing. You stay away and you call it in. Now move forward to the 15-minute to 1 hour mark. This is when the phone becomes your main lifeline. People start checking utility apps, texting family, trying to figure out how widespread this is. And this is also when the first mistakes start happening. Not because people are careless, but because they're improvising. Someone lights a bunch of candles because it feels like the obvious solution. Someone thinks about firing up the grill inside the garage to cook something. Someone considers running their car in the garage with the door cracked open just to charge a phone. All 3 of those are more dangerous than the blackout itself. Open flames inside a home during a chaotic moment are a real fire risk. That's actually why official safety guidance recommends battery-powered flashlights and lanterns over candles. Not because candles don't work, but because an open flame indoors when things are already disorganized is asking for trouble. And running any gas-powered engine, whether it's a car, a generator, or a grill, inside an enclosed space like a garage, even with the door open, can build up carbon monoxide fast. It's colorless. It's odorless. You won't smell it coming. People have died from this exact mistake, thinking an open garage door was enough ventilation. It's not. So already, in the first hour, the real danger isn't the dark. It's what people do because of the dark. Now let's jump to the 1 to 4 hour window. This is where things start feeling less like an inconvenience and more like a situation. Your house is slowly losing its temperature control. If it's summer, it's getting warmer inside. If it's winter, it's getting colder. How fast depends on your home. A well-insulated house barely notices for a while. An apartment, an older home, or anywhere with thin walls starts to feel it quicker. Here's the number almost nobody knows. An unopened fridge keeps food safe for about 4 hours. That's it, 4 hours. Not because the food goes bad instantly, but because that's the window where the internal temperature starts climbing into unsafe territory for things like meat, dairy, and leftovers. And I want to be clear about something, because this trips people up constantly. You cannot tell if food has gone unsafe by smelling it, looking at it, or tasting it. Food safety agencies are very direct about this. Harmful bacteria doesn't always change how something smells or looks. So the 4 hour mark isn't a suggestion, it's an actual line. The freezer is more forgiving. A freezer that's half full can hold safe temperatures for around 24 hours if you keep it shut. A full freezer can last closer to 48 hours. So the lesson here, which almost nobody thinks about before it happens, is that a full freezer is doing you a much bigger favor than a full fridge. Now here's where the story starts splitting into 2 very different experiences, depending on who you are. For a healthy adult, in mild weather, with no medical devices and a decent amount of preparation, hour 4 might just feel annoying. Warm house, no Wi-Fi, dead phone charger. That's it. But for somebody else, this exact same outage is a completely different event. Think about someone on oxygen, someone using a home dialysis machine, a baby who needs a specific temperature to sleep safely, an older person living alone who depends on a medical alert device. For them, hour 4 isn't annoying. It's the start of a real problem. This is actually one of the most overlooked parts of blackout preparation. People plan for candles and flashlights, but the people most at risk during an outage are the ones depending on electricity to keep a piece of medical equipment running. And official guidance on this is pretty clear. If you or someone in your home depends on powered medical equipment, you need a backup plan specific to that device, because a general emergency kit isn't going to cut it. Let's keep moving. 4 to 8 hours in. This is when the outage stops being a mystery and starts being a resource problem. You're thinking about food that might need to be thrown out. You're thinking about how much battery is left on your phone and whether you should be using it to scroll the news or saving it in case you need to make a call. If the outage is bigger than just your street, you might notice that nearby stores are closed too, because a lot of them can't run their registers or their card machines without power. This is also usually the point where people who own a generator start thinking about pulling it out. And this is worth pausing on for a second, because there's a common belief that a generator basically makes your house work like normal again. It doesn't. A portable generator has limited output. It can't power everything at once. It needs fuel, which runs out. And the placement matters more than people realize. It has to run outside, away from windows, doors, and vents, and honestly, further away than most people assume. Cracking a garage door isn't enough distance. This one detail alone has caused a lot of accidental poisonings, because people assumed a little airflow was the same as being outdoors. It's not. 8 to 12 hours in, and now we're usually talking about nightfall, or in some cases, a full day of extreme heat or cold, depending on the season. This is when the physical side of things really shows up. Moving around a dark house becomes its own small risk. Tripping, bumping into things, using stairs without light. If it's a hot climate, the inside of the house can get seriously uncomfortable. And for the people we talked about earlier, older adults, infants, anyone with a health condition, heat without air conditioning isn't just uncomfortable, it can become dangerous. A fan alone doesn't solve that once temperatures get high enough. In cold weather, it's the opposite problem. A home losing heat overnight can get dangerously cold. And this is exactly when people make risky decisions, like trying to heat a room with a gas oven, which is something you're specifically told never to do, because it's not built for that, and it creates its own hazards. By this point in the timeline, most households are also thinking hard about communication. Cell service doesn't always disappear the moment the power goes out. A lot of cell towers have their own backup power, but as hours pass, that backup can run low, networks can get overloaded with everyone trying to check in at once, and service can get spotty. This is actually why during emergencies, you're told to keep calls short and use text messages instead of calling. Texts tend to get through even when the network is struggling, and they use less of the system than a phone call does. Now we're heading into the 12 to 24-hour stretch, which is really where everything from earlier starts compounding. That half-full freezer we talked about is now approaching its limit. Phone batteries, power banks, flashlights, all of it has been draining since minute 1, and by now, a lot of households are running low. If someone's using a generator, they need to have planned for enough fuel to actually make it through the night, because running out at 3 a.m. in the cold or the heat is its own kind of stressful. Water is something people don't think about until this point either. A lot of people assume that if the power's out, the water just stops too. That's not automatically true. A lot of water systems have backup generators, storage tanks, or gravity-fed systems that keep water flowing even without electricity. But it's not guaranteed everywhere, because water systems still depend on electric pumps and treatment equipment, and if a system loses power for long enough, you could see pressure drop or, in some cases, a boil water notice from local officials. The honest answer is, it depends entirely on your local system, and the smart move is to follow whatever your local utility says, instead of assuming either way. There's also a piece of this that almost nobody talks about, and that's the waiting itself. Somewhere around hour 18 or 20, a lot of people start refreshing their utility app every few minutes, hoping for an updated restoration time. And here's the honest truth about that. Crews often can't give you an exact number early on, not because they're hiding it, but because they genuinely don't know yet. They have to physically find the damage first, figure out how many poles or lines or transformers are affected, and only then can they give a real estimate. So that restoration time you see on an app in the first few hours is often a rough guess, not a promise. It gets more accurate the longer the outage goes on, once crews are actually out there assessing things. Knowing that ahead of time can save you a lot of frustration, because you stop expecting a countdown clock and start expecting updates that shift as the picture becomes clearer. By hour 24, most households have hit some kind of decision point. Do you stay in the house? Do you go somewhere else? A family member's place? A shelter? A hotel with power? That decision usually comes down to a few things. How hot or cold is it? Is anyone in the house dependent on medical equipment? How much food and water do you actually have left? And is there any real update on when power might come back? And here's something worth saying clearly, because it matters. None of this means a blackout automatically turns into some kind of disaster movie. Most outages don't last 24 hours. Most people get their power back well before things get this serious. But the households who handle a long outage, the best aren't the ones with the most expensive gear. They're the ones who understood, ahead of time, which systems in their home they actually depend on, and how long those systems can go without power before it becomes a real problem. That's really the whole story here. It's not about darkness. Darkness is just the first thing you notice. It's never actually the biggest problem. The real risk hides in the stuff running quietly in the background that you never think about until it stops. Your fridge, your medical equipment, your home's temperature, your ability to call someone. All of that is invisible, right up until the moment it isn't. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this. It's not about being scared of a blackout. It's about knowing exactly which 4 or 5 things in your home actually matter if the power goes out for a full day, and having a real plan for those specific things, instead of just grabbing a flashlight and hoping for the best. If you want to go deeper on how to actually prepare for each of these stages, I put some resources in the description below.